Chapter 253 of Jujutsu Kaisen is officially out, and man, things are looking absolutely cooked for our heroes. Not only are all 4 of the heavy hitters either down or occupied, but due to witnessing the power of Maki's heavenly restriction, Sukuna has decided to lock in, resulting in the most powerful Black Flash we've seen in the series. What this essentially means is that next chapter, Kusakabe is going to have to face a Sukuna that has both recovered RCT and access to Malevolent Shrine. And look, while Kusakabe obviously isn't someone that can stand toe to toe with the likes of Sukuna in terms of power or really anything else, especially given that he doesn't have a cursed technique, Kusakabe makes up for that difference in spades with his knowledge of Jujutsu and tactical planning. After all, he was not only key when it came to saving everyone in Shibuya using his new Shadow Style technique, we can't forget that Kusakabe is the one who overlooked and orchestrated the entire plan to exorcise Sukuna. Not to mention, he was also one of the main commentators when it came to the battle between Gojo and Sukuna, going to further show that while he can't do some of these highly advanced applications of Jujutsu, he most likely has a better understanding than most. And so, while nobody should really be expecting Kusakabe to come out here and put up all-star numbers against the King of Curses, it's not necessarily crazy to think that Kusakabe can pull off the impossible and stall long enough for Yuji, Chozo, and hopefully even Hikari to arrive for support. But regardless of whether or not Kusakabe can stall Sukuna, I have a feeling that we're finally about to see why everyone thinks so highly of our not so optimistic sensei. But before I get into this, as well as the rest of the chapter, if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and consider subscribing. Now, this won't be a review where I'm going through every little detail and plot thread, but just things that I find that stand out or just find really intriguing. But with that being said, thanks in advance and enjoy the video. With chapter 252 ending in the revelation that Sukuna still has yet to go all out, the chapter begins with the King of Curses immediately proving Urume's statement to be true. Sukuna makes such quick work of Maki that you'd almost forget on paper she's supposed to have the huge advantage here. That's because Maki possesses the Split Soul Katana, a special cursed tool that's capable of completely ignoring the hardness and cutting the soul directly. But it's explained by Yuta in chapter 249 that Sukuna's been using precise chainsaw-like slashes on his hands and arms in order to grab and parry any blades. And before you go into the comments yapping about how the Split Soul Katana is supposed to cut through anything or how Sukuna somehow has plot armor, something you should keep in mind is that this isn't just some ass pull by Akutami at all. I mean, just looking at the past 60 chapters, and we've always seen Sukuna flat out copy the application of cursed techniques, whether it was the max elephant style piercing blood, recovering cursed technique burnout, or even splitting his soul into cursed objects after his death. These are all applications of cursed energy that Sukuna has copied in one way or another. So even though we see him using his slashes as a barrier, which pretty much copies the application of Limitless, it's not anything to be surprised about because this is just within the realm of Sukuna's character. And another thing to keep in mind regarding the Split Soul Katana being able to ignore durability and cut through anything, well, this just isn't true. Because while the Split Soul Katana is capable of ignoring hardness and cutting the soul directly, that doesn't necessarily mean that it can also cut through any and all cursed techniques. For example, let's take Geto's cursed spirit manipulation and Gojo's Limitless. We saw in the fight between Toji and Geto, Toji used the Split Soul Katana to destroy Geto's Rainbow Dragon, a Shikigami with extremely tough hide. But in Toji's battle with Gojo, instead of using his Split Soul Katana, Toji opted to use the inverted Spear of Heaven. And the reason he did this is because, unlike the Split Soul Katana, which only ignores physical hardness, the inverted Spear of Heaven can actually nullify any cursed technique. And so, bringing this back to Sukuna utilizing Cleave and Dismantle like Limitless, and hopefully it now makes a lot more sense as to why Sukuna can block and parry Maki's attacks. Not saying that its effectiveness is comparable to Infinity, but again, this is Sukuna being Sukuna and not a random plot hole or BS power up. Putting that stuff aside though, because I've been yapping about it for way too long, let's talk about that monologue Sukuna had right before he hit Maki with that Black Flash. Because this monologue not only shows us more insight as to what exactly Sukuna values as a sorcerer, it's also just a really interesting dynamic between Maki and Sukuna. Sukuna explained how, at its core, sorcery is all all skin and flesh, and Maki's body, due to her heavenly restriction, is all marrow and bone. And then continuing to say your very existence denies what it means to be a sorcerer. Again, referring to Maki's heavenly restriction and how she shaved away all of her jujutsu. And this shows that not only does he recognize those who have completely forsaken jujutsu, Sukuna also sees Maki as someone who can actually challenge his worth as a sorcerer, going so far to admit that Maki is the only one who's ever forced a role upon him. And now, there are two things that I wanted to point out here. Firstly, this confirms that during that Gojo and Sukuna fight, while to us it may have been a battle settling who's the strongest of today and the strongest of the modern era, to Sukuna it was actually nothing more than just fighting another sorcerer. Not only did he never actually go all out, but he also ended up learning how to perform the world slash. Whereas with Maki, not to say he's putting in as much effort with Maki as he did with Gojo, but he does seem to be enjoying this fight a little bit more. And I think it really shows how confident and conceited Sukuna can be as a character, and like, I'm talking about unnatural levels of confidence and conceitedness, because it's very clear that in terms of overall power and battle IQ, Sukuna is in a league of his own. I mean, Maki's facing a Sukuna without a domain, lowered RCT output, not to mention he's been getting jumped for the past 11 chapters or so. It's already very clear that sorcery is in fact the better option in terms of development. However, in order to justify his almost endless pursuit of jujutsu, Sukuna has to see for himself, and he won't allow a what if debate. And to make matters worse, even though he could have ended this with a point blank cleave or a world slash and dismantle, it's then for the first time in the series that the Sparks of Black would choose the King of Curses. This Black Flash not only takes Maki out the fight, but from now on, Sukuna's gonna be operating at 120% of his potential. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this might be one of the best generational runs since Aizen or Madara. Nevertheless, the chapter leaves us off with Kusakabe as the last stand against Sukuna. And interestingly enough, for some reason, I don't feel like Kusakabe is about to die here. To start off, like I mentioned earlier, whether it's his realistic outlook on things or simply blind luck, Kusakabe has been shown to pull off some pretty good feats, and due to only seeing Kusakabe and Miwa utilize new shadow style, I feel that it's really been underrated as far as like cursed energy and cursed techniques go. Plus, according to Ino, when it comes to maneuvering around special grades, Kusakabe may take himself lightly, but we all know that he isn't the type to just let himself become fodder. Regardless of this though, for Gege to call back to this volume extra to this moment, especially given these insane circumstances, it becomes pretty obvious that there's something in Kusakabe's bag that we just haven't seen. And I say this because for the most part, we know the capabilities of sorcerers like Nanami, Gojo, and Meimei. So for Nanami and Meimei especially, sorcerers that we've seen to be capable of defeating special grade curses in one hit, name none other than Kusakabe as the strongest grade 1 sorcerer, it becomes pretty clear that Gege wants us to pour stocks into our relatable sensei. Now that Sukuna is locked in and amped beyond comprehension, I've seen some people using this as fuel that Gojo is going to be coming back, and honestly, the way things are happening, it could happen, but personally, I don't think it would make a whole lot of sense to take the story that way, because not only would that take away from Gojo's character that Gege's worked so hard to produce and build up, but it would honestly make this last battle way too easy, while also making the huge impact that they've made on Sukuna since Gojo's passing hit way less than it should. Not to mention the fact that Gojo wouldn't be able to operate at 100% unless it's a one-on-one, which, if you remember, was one of the main reasons Gojo even fought alone in the first place. However, I won't deny that for the past 7 or 8 chapters, there has been things like Ui's teleportation technique and Shoko's fundamentally different RCT that gives reason to the possibility that Gojo could return, though it's not really something I personally think Gege would do, especially given the weight this battle holds for Yuji's character. All in all though, Kusakabe is gonna have to pull some absolutely huge plays if he's gonna stall Sukuna long enough for Yuji and Choso to arrive. And look, if Kusakabe can't show up next chapter and he ends up being the next victim for Sukuna, as long as we get some sort of backstory or explanation for this panel right here, I can't really say that I wouldn't be satisfied. Anyways, that's pretty much it for me this video. What did you think of the chapter? Was it good, bad, hated it? Put all your thoughts and theories in the comments below, and have an amazing rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.